Cuddy, who's taught at the university level, who's been a consultant to industry, who certainly writes successfully. He was in the Reagan Department of Education, but he's here with us today to bring us up to date on what's really going on in the world, and then to discuss his latest book, The Power Elite, their history and their future. Go right ahead, Dr. Cuddy.
Okay, well, as usual, before getting into my latest book, The Power Elite, Their History and Future, that's offered by Radio Liberty, I give some comments about contemporary notes of interest. And there are several that what you don't see much of in the American press, but if you know where to look, you can find information. First of all, in the London Review of Books, less than a month ago, Seymour Hersh, who is somewhat suspect on a number of occasions, but when he does dig up some facts, they are rather interesting. He had an item in the London Review of Books called Who's Sarin, S-A-R-I-N, the sarin gas. And basically what he has done is put forth what a lot of us have said, and that is that it wasn't the Assad forces that used the chemical weapon, sarin gas, but rather the al-Nusra group, the one that's affiliated with al-Qaeda. Over there, they had the capability of manufacturing large quantities of it and so on. And so Seymour Hersh goes into his intelligence officers, past and present, who he knows. And he's, in this particular case, it says, a former senior intelligence official told me that the Obama administration had altered the available information in terms of its timing and sequence to enable the president and his advisors to make intelligence retrieved days after the attack look as if it had been picked up and analyzed in real time as an attack happening. The distortion, the intelligence officer said, reminded him of the 1964 Gulf of Tonkin incident, when the Johnson administration reversed the sequence of National Security Agency intercepts to justify one of the early bombings in North Vietnam, and so forth and so on. So you might check that out. It's on the Internet, the London Review of Books. It's titled Who's, W-H-O-S-E, Sarin, S-A-R-I-N. So here you have a case of the president making these overtures and blusters towards Syria, and based on information which was to be charitable, faulty at best, and actually had distorted it to do what he wanted to do. But that's the way Seymour Hersh and everybody might look at this. But and I won't go into this again because I already have, how the whole thing is part of a sort of plan which is unfolding, and that's why they allowed the sarin gas and other things to leave Iraq in the first place years ago, to go to Syria so that the plan would be this could happen today. You couldn't have this happening today unless Saddam had sent his sarin gas to Syria. I think that's one reason why George W. Bush did not say, well, yeah, we know where the weapons of mass destruction went. They went to Syria. He kept his mouth shut because the plan is now it is useful.
And I think it's so vitally important that what Dr. Cuddy is saying. Basically, Assad's Syria's poison gas, most of this came certainly from Iraq's poison gas. And of course, Iraq's poison gas was given to Saddam Hussein by the United States. So basically, a lot of this is American poison gas. You went to Iraq and went certainly then down into Syria. But we're not going to tell the American people that, oh, my goodness, terrible Assad, we're going to have to attack Assad. And we'll be back in just a moment here at Radio Liberty. Well, this is Dr. Stan here. Our guest this afternoon, Dr. Dennis Cuddy, who's taught at the university level, who certainly has been a consultant for industry, has certainly worked in the Reagan Department of Education. He's a prolific writer and certainly a regular guest on Radio Liberty. And he was simply talking about this whole phony issue that Seymour Hersh had written an article in the London Review of Books pointing out that this whole issue of Assad using poison gas was intentionally a lie on the part of the Obama administration. They altered the intelligence of reports so that they could justify an attack on Assad. They wanted an effort. They wanted to be able to justify attacking him, just as they wanted to take us into a war back in 1964 after the Gulf of Tonkin incident, a totally fallacious incident. 58 28,000 American boys died. And it was all a lie. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident. It was all contrived, and certainly even Robert McNamara eventually admitted that. But go right ahead, Dr. Cuddy.
Okay, so anyway, that's one incident. The next thing, of course, is the unfolding knowledge of what the NSA, National Security Agency, is able to do. And just about 5 days ago, there was an item titled How the NSA Hacks Your iPhone. And the program they use is called Dropout Jeep. Now, remember, I said that all of this PRISM stuff that there was in the news that the NSA was using actually is 20-plus years behind the times, because they had something that did about the same thing called PROMIS, P-R-O-M-I-S, no E on the end of it, many years ago, that I wrote about many years ago. And so in this particular one, the unfolding of what happens is presented as there was what they called as a 50-page catalog of what they call backdoor penetration techniques that the NSA uses, and you can find this in the German publication, The Spiegel. It's translatable. They have an English edition, and so what you find is that there's a description of how the NSA actually bugs remotely your iPhone. They don't have to get a court order to tap your landline. They just bug your iPhone, and the way they accomplish that is this software that's called Dropout Jeep, Jeep, like the vehicle Jeep. And in this, it's described as follows: quote, Dropout Jeep is a software implant for the Apple iPhone that utilizes modular mission applications to provide...
Hold that thought, Dennis. We'll be back in a moment. Well, this is Dr. Cuddy, Dr. Stan, and Dr. Cuddy is just talking about the fact that certainly they have the ability to listen to all of your conversations on your iPhone. They've had this ability for 20 years or more. Has nothing to do with terrorism. They know this whole war on terrorism is as phony as a $3 bill. How many terrorist attacks have we had in the United States in the last 12 years, since September 11th? You can count them on the fingers of one hand, and most of them are contrived. Basically, because the war on terrorism is simply to justify setting up a surveillance society where they watch everything and watch everybody, collect dossiers, and, of course, prepare their list of who they will move against, of course, as we move into the dictatorship, because, of course, our government is controlled by far different forces than the average individual understands. But certainly Dr. Cuddy is talking about these programs that they have that now allow them to even to certainly listen to on the iPhones on a regular basis, and certainly to our computers. All of this is being monitored, and that's why they're so furious with Snowden, because he's brought this out and letting the American people know about it. But it existed long before the phony war on terrorism. Go right ahead, Dr. Cuddy.
Yeah, and it does a number of things. Actually, you can with this Dropout Jeep program here. There's various applications. It uses a lot of this, technical terminology, but what it amounts to is they can retrieve information of your list of individual contacts that you have. They can monitor your voicemail. They can perform geolocation. They can locate you. Camera capture. They can see you. Cell tower location, and so forth and so on. And so there's command and control and data exfiltration. They call it not exfiltration can occur with this data connection that they have. And they actually provide this flow chart in this piece that you can look. You can just Google this, quote mark, how the NSA hacks your iPhone, close quote, in Google, and this description should show up. So they've been able to do that and have been doing it for quite some time. And also, when you look at what President Obama is doing, I want to clarify something that I often say. I often say President Obama and other presidents are puppets. Well, they are in a sense. There's nobody like telling him every minute of the day what he should do next. And the reason is because you have to understand this sort of flows from Cecil Rhodes, among others, but Cecil Rhodes is conspiracy. He said it was a scheme to take the government of the whole world. He had a secret society of the elect. And what Rhodes said, and he formally began it in 1891, he said that his conspiracy would last about 6 decades, roughly 60 years, to about 1951. And he said, and then his conspiracy would end as a conspiracy. And he didn't mean that his project would end, but what it would do is be changed or evolve into a network of like-minded globalists. They would not actually have to perform conspiratorial functions as in a secret meeting in a secret place with secret orders to certain individuals to do X, Y, and Z. They would simply have enough people in place that they wouldn't have to do that. It would just be, sort of organically go forward, and people who they chose for specific occupations as university presidents or whatever would just automatically do what the original conspirators want them to do, which is a globalist worldview promoting a world government. And so what you have with President Obama is typical of that. They don't really have to call him up and tell him at 10 a.m. today and then 11 a.m. and 12 noon and 1 o'clock, everything to do. They watch them from years ago when they're just a young fellow and a young woman if it's a woman, and they monitor them and see how they're doing, and they usually have a handler position with them. Could be a wife that they get hooked up with them sort of accidentally on purpose. Or an advisor, sort of like Brzezinski was an advisor to Jimmy Carter, and then he's an advisor on foreign affairs to President Obama. And so they have these handlers with them to just, watch them, be sure they're okay. But originally they're put through various tests at their lower level, wherever they're in a city council or, the governor of a state, and then a U.S. senator, and then eventually a president, whatever it is. They've been watched, they've been monitored, they've been tracked, they've been tested, see how they react to certain situations, see if they go along with something or object to it and why. And that way they identify people as they move up the hierarchy of success and of power, meaning doing the bidding of this power elite. So in a way they're puppets, but it's not in the usual sense. By the time they've screened you from the time you were in college to the time you're 50 years old, they've got 30-some years of detailed background and analysis of what you, the person they want to be one of their main movers and shakers, is capable of doing, will do under certain circumstances. They have a psychological profile on the people. They know what their tastes are, what they like, what they don't like, and so on, so that by the time they become, say, 50 and they're running for the U.S. Senate, they don't really have to, tell them what to do every second. They know that person is going to pretty much do what they want them to do without them even telling them to do that. That's the refined psychological techniques that go on. And I remember, I've mentioned this before, so I won't belabor this either, that I think they were looking at me for the same sort of thing. And Carnegie, for example, is heavy into this stuff. And, of course, Carnegie Foundation is in New York, and Barack Obama deliberately transfers from Occidental College to Columbia, and he's there, and he spends a lot of time with Zbigniew Brzezinski when he was a young fellow, when President Obama was a young fellow. And Brzezinski had just come out of the Carter administration in the late 70s as the National Security Advisor, placed there by David Rockefeller, of course, and pretty much directing national security policy for President Carter. And so when you have a person like that monitoring you and, watching you, testing you, and you have this young college student and they send them to, wherever, Pakistan or abroad or traveling, and put him through various tests and see that he gets elected and helped to do whatever, they pretty much know what you're going to do. And so Carnegie, as well as the Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, all are involved in this. And you'll remember that Norman Dodd, back when he was doing work for the Reese Committee, examining tax-exempt foundations, had his secretary, a woman, look at some of the minutes of the meetings of Carnegie when it first began around 1910, and she saw in their minutes of their meeting that they